You guys are just all sharing your own slides, right? I'm not, in the end, we didn't expect me to, yeah, cool. It's just, I was like, am I meant to have any slides? No, I'm just
Oh,
directing you.
Tom, I thought you were going to
Walk through it.
perfectly line up my slides, and I'll give you a wink when to change.
Yeah.
Fine,
You don't even need to. I think
I'll
I know
do it.
you well enough by now, Evan, that I can just sense when you're about to get to your next point.
There we go.
All right, I'll be back in.
Weave it together, coming up short and giving up never. Weave it together, come along, come along, come along, come along.
Okay, I'm going to start letting people in, but we won't formally kick off for a couple of minutes.
Blending it together, a world on fire can't last forever. We're gonna mend it together. A stitch in time is gonna save nine. A stitch in time is gonna save nine. And I wanna be a catalyst for change, trying something different. I wanna change the rules of the game, 'cause even the smallest bird can fly up to the top of the tree. And I wanna be a catalyst and find out what could be.
Hey everyone, welcome. We're just going to give it another minute or two before we kick off officially. Make yourself comfortable.
Dream together, it's
Welcome to Catalyzing Change Week. This year's Catalyzing Change Week is about solutions from the front lines by social innovators.
In 2022, Catalyst 2030 concentrated its efforts on bringing proximate leaders and frontline solutions to the forefront. Collaborations led by members from the Global South produced groundbreaking reports on climate and transforming education, with an emphasis on offering local solutions. We continued our mission to create an enabling environment for social entrepreneurs to flourish by initiating a letter to donors, signed by more than 1,200 social entrepreneurs and innovators. The Catalyst 2030 awards ceremony was spectacular, and the awards themselves welcomed by the private sector, governments, bio multilaterals and donors.
Catalyst 2030 as a movement is disruptive.
One of the best things I think that's come out of Catalyst 2030 so far is incredible collaboration across the ecosystem that just didn't exist before Catalyst came into being.
The thing I love most about Catalyst is that it's an open movement for social entrepreneurs around the world.
I'd encourage anyone who's looking to be more connected with their local communities around social development goals to come along to Catalyzing Change Week.
Welcome to Catalyzing Change Week.
Fantastic. Welcome everyone to this next session as part of Catalyzing Change Week. A huge thanks to the Catalyst 2030 community and organizers for creating this platform for us to be able to share some of what we're learning as we seek to use business and innovation to do good in the world. My name's Tom Dawkins. I'm the co-founder of social enterprises Start Some Good and Lend for Good. And it's my great pleasure to be hosting this panel tonight. And I want to acknowledge, as it is our practice in Australia, that I'm joining you from the traditional lands of the Camaragal people of the Eora Nation here on the North Shore of Sydney, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging here. But I also, of course, want to pay my respects to the incredible diversity of cultures, stories and individuals that we have joining us on this call, and pay my respects to all of your elders past, present and emerging as well, and traditions. Thrilled to be here with all of you tonight. We're going to be featuring the work of 3 impact enterprises, 2 of them based in the developing world, and then 1 based in Australia that works with and seeks to support and seeks to help get capital to many emerging enterprises in the developing world. And then we'll open that out into more of a conversation about this challenge of getting capital to the solutions that are emerging on the ground in a variety of markets. I don't know if there's a way to kind of pin the panelists. Sorry, and there we go. Now I can put me on screen. Don't know why, but we were all staring at Evan. Not that there's anything wrong with that. So who is with us tonight? Thrilled. Where are my notes? Sorry, guys. Thrilled to be joined first by Dee Lundy, who's the co-founder of AgriHouse, based in Cambodia. AgriHouse is an impact enterprise founded by and run by Khmer women, and that is creating for the last 3 years through their end-to-end value chain for they're creating high-quality cricket-based proteins, and they're striving to follow the Sustainable Development Goals, both in terms of creating employment, but also the enormous climate benefits of alternative proteins on the ground. So thrilled to be joined by Dee Lundy, the CEO and co-founder. We've also got Evan from Tan Waste, which is experts in waste management across Tanzania. Evan has a really diverse career working in a number of emerging markets as well as Australia. So he's got a variety of experiences to draw on beyond, while also sharing what he's up to at the moment with Tan Waste in Tanzania and how they're addressing, how they're creating change around waste management and creating jobs as well. And then we've got Cameron Neal, who's one of my co-founders of Lend for Good, but also the co-founder of Red Hat Impact and Ethical Fields. He's really, man about town when it comes to impact enterprise and impact investment in Australia and the Asia Pacific. Always involved in the cutting edge of catalytic capital, frontier finance, whatever you want to call it, but figuring out a better way to fund the solutions we need to build the future that we want. Thank you all for being here. So I think we're just going to kick off with you, Dee, to tell us more about AgriHouse. So we're going to get Dee and Evan to do initial presentations so you kind of know where they're coming from, what their context is, and that will help you know what you might want to ask them more about later. So do please think about any questions that you have, hold on to them, or in fact, you can just start submitting them in the chat because we'll be looking to pull them out from the chat later. So over to you, Dee, if you want to, I'll pin you and you can share your screen. Let's unmute you too.
One second. You see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, 1 second. So, yeah, Lundy from AgriHouse. So, just introduce a little bit about AgriHouse. So, AgriHouse, we're working with Cambodian cricket farmers, and connecting them to the global market through the capacity building to use our ag tech. And access to the market. I'm sorry, my screen is not moving. So, yeah. So, we want to design an income stream for farmers with disability, also women and elderly that remaining at home when their partner leave to work like Thailand or Korea. So Cambodian have raised crickets in a very long time, but it was very time consuming and also require a lot of labor. We know that we also have to look on the demand side or on the cricket-based products. With the ultimate of the goal to reach the export market, then we register as a greenhouse. We are majority Khmer and women owns. So our product, we have three core products. And for us to access to the export market, we need to ensure that the cricket are eating plant-based feedstock, and also we have like, for example, like semi-automation kit, agro processing, and also human consumption, human nutrition. Our solar power kits is regulated by breeding environment and rice yield by 50% increase. To give you an example, we have buyback contract guarantee with the farmer. The traditional cricket racing, it's around 15 kilograms per cycle, but for our, it's about 25 to 36 kilograms, which is increase the income per cycle is around $50 per pence. So Nimol, who is in the picture, and she saved the money to increase her pen up to 10 cricket pen already. So based on Nimol and other farmers successful, we are now developed to the larger cricket models. The solar power pans are also the demand for NGO, and then who also working with marginalized community and also with the urban poor people. In our production facility, we are developing our own feedstock, and so when the recipes validate, we will work with we will find the gender also social inclusive to input for the input supplier. The facility also allowed us to buy and trade the cricket eggs with other farmers to ensure that healthy growth. We start our roast cricket, and then this is our range of products. We have like roasted cricket, cricket juice snack, and also cricket powder. We were approached by World Food Program to join their spring program, and we working with their World Food Program in Cambodia office. We identify a number of challenge. For this, we also develop a juice snack using cricket powder to have over malnutrition. Greenhouse, we have two syndicate impact loan from Red Hat and also from Land for Good. For the first one, we are focused on cricket racing, cricket development, and move to initial prototype based on the prototype phase and then into the expansion. For the second loan, it's from Land for Good that are focused for the bridging capital, also for World Food Program, and then expand our production according to the feedstocks. So we have a communication with our buyer after we send the sample. So they like our product, and also right now we are working on the production capacity and also improving packaging, certification for local and global market, as well as the production to scale up for all the units. Thank you so much. This is from the president from a greenhouse. Thank you. Let me know if you have any question.
That's great, thank you. So yeah, start collecting questions. We'll do questions all together rather than one at a time. So we'll get these initial context providing presentations out, and then we'll come together to kind of tackle the interesting issues that span across these kinds of enterprises. So thank you so much, Dee. Evan, over to you. Hang on, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't realize I couldn't unmute myself once I started to share. So one of the fun things. Look, hey everybody, my name is Evan Lorindo from Tan Waste. I'm currently living in Mwanza, Tanzania, which is Tanzania's second largest city. I actually, as Tom mentioned, I met the Red Hat guys when I was living in Australia previously. And my background is in waste management, environmental solutions, as well as oil spill. So when I was looking around at Tanzania, I saw a big gap in the waste management market. So who is Tan Waste? We started in 2021 in the Lake Zone region of Tanzania. Our phase one has definitely been a focus on municipal solid waste. And as we kind of continue to grow and get into other markets, we are looking at more specialty waste, such as hazardous waste, medical waste, liquid waste, treatment, that type of thing. We currently, our current project is the Kahama Municipal Waste Contract. It's for about, we collect for about half the city, which is about 300,000 people. We're also trying to dip our toe into the private market. I also understand that we're probably not the traditional target of impact funding. I think sometimes you kind of have to be creative of understanding of what impact is, and for us, it's we're doing about transportation collection of about 45 to 50 tons per day, which is, for a relatively small town is quite massive. And, I think, granted, I'm in the industry, but why does waste matter? I definitely have always said that waste management is a public health issue. Just from a logical point of view, it's prevents breeding of disease-carrying organisms, mosquitoes, rats, bugs, that these tend to carry malaria and dengue fever. And it's particularly an issue in areas in Tanzania and the global south, because such a high percentage of the waste tends to be organic waste, food scraps and the like. And that's really where where things fester and the public health issues really start to show themselves. Traditionally, one way of disposal has been to burning, but obviously burning waste creates both physical and environmental hazards. One, from just kind of the footprint left over, but two, from the respiratory issues that are left over. And also, you don't always know what you're burning. That gets breathed and linked to cancers and other issues. Our loans, we've had 2 loans so far. Our first loan was in May of 22. And in general, that was about 55,000 USD. With that, we were able to hire about 30 plus staff and bring on 3 trucks. To kind of tell you how exciting it went from that point of view, we won the contract on June 27th and was expected to deploy on July 1st for the city. So things moved fairly quickly. We'd thankfully staffed up a bit, but even getting the trucks in place and making sure everyone knew where to go, you can route something on a piece of paper, but until you're actually driving and collecting for the first time, it's definitely new. We did get a second loan in December of 22, about $22,000. We were able to add 2 more trucks to the fleet and also provide some cash flow relief. At the coming up, we probably have a third loan for a city contract where we'd be serving roughly 1 million people. So, in our portfolio, that would be another, conservatively, another 60, 70 tons per day. So, you start looking at, how much waste we're moving and what kind of impactful environment that we're having, and it starts to quickly add up. Look, I think it's quite fair to say that not every, every time you kind of come out, there's lessons to be learned. Especially when you're starting a new business and in, let's say, low resource environments and areas that you're also trying to change. One of the big things was on typical waste trucks, there's a payback for about 5 to 7 years. our impact loan is for 2. And I think that that is, you know, something that in the future we'll be much more cognizant of understanding, you know, of actually the payback structure. I think the local blowback was much stronger, even though we probably have the largest waste company in the region at this point. They were upset that, quote unquote, it was not a local company that won. And whereas, you know, even though 30 plus people who are all locals were running the company, I think the fact that there was a foreigner who you know was also involved created issues. I'm sure Dee can attest to this. Anyone that's worked out in environments like this, administrative stress really builds up. Making sure everything, the paperwork's ready, the systems and the processes on the administrative level are not always as robust as maybe you're used to. It creates a lot of frustration at times. For us, the municipal waste, if we're lucky, is going to be a break-even proposition. However, this contract actually opened all the other doors for the growth of the company, right? It's, you know, the opportunities for private contracts, opportunities for other cities, expanding into different waste types. So this is necessary to get into more growth from a sustainability point of view. And I think we have to look back, and we are impacting lives over the course of each week as we do our routes. We're making the cities cleaner, safer, healthier. And so it's just not the 30 plus people that are receiving a paycheck from us, that it's also the you know, multiples of hundreds of thousands of people who receive our service. And I think that type of impact doesn't really get mentioned far enough in that regard. In terms of our future, we are expecting a third loan to go through the loan process for once the waste contract. We have 2 private tenders we're waiting on a response for, and I think that would really help the sustainability of the business, right? It becomes more about you know, an impact fund and a real, let's say, business at that point, because there is much more profitability, which means growth, which means we can bring on more people. And then I think we're bringing on some environmental engineers who have some great ideas in terms of exploring the needs of specialty waste on a countrywide level. And in a big extractive country like Tanzania, gold, oil, gas, all of that, there's plenty of soil that needs to be remediated. There's plenty of medical waste that needs to be treated, and so on and so on. So, you know, it is an exciting times. It's you know, we're still relatively new, maybe compared to D, but we you know, we're pushing forward. It's these ventures are never as easy as you're hoping, but that's just part of the fun. So anyway, you know, I want to thank everyone for being here, and you know, look forward to answering any questions that I can.
Cool, thank you, Evan. Over to you, Cameron. Tell us a little bit about how it had impact and Learn for Good, I guess.
Hi, everyone. My name's Cam. I'm here in Melbourne, in Australia. And you've just heard from Dee from AgriHouse with their Cricket House project, and Evan from Tan Waste. We've had the pleasure of being able to work with both of those founders and those enterprises now for, as Dee kind of said, you know, we did a loan with them back in 2018-ish, and then in 2022, we started working with Evan probably 2021. This is what Red Hat Impact's about. We're about trying to mobilize and facilitate the growth of impact enterprises. And I guess, you know, while we do advisory work and do strategy kind of stuff, the big missing piece for so many enterprises is capital, the capital that they need to be able to grow and unlock their impact. And you know, the impact of these businesses, you know, very aligned with SDGs, you know, in Tan Waste's context, you know, you've got jobs, job creation and poverty and environmental and health benefits. WASH is one of those, you know, the SDGs there around sanitation and health. And then, you know, in Cambodia, you know, talking about livelihood creation and poverty eradication, environmental impacts and climate changes, as well as Tom mentioned with proteins. But these, you know, I guess our model here is to be demand led. Well, when we talk about what capital is needed, that question is asked of those enterprises. So I think one of the key things that we think is necessary, and it's kind of part of our thesis, is that one of the reasons why people don't access capital is a lot of capital has a whole bunch of boxes built around it that people have to come to it and meet and tick boxes in order to access money. Our whole approach, and what we've kind of baked now as Red Hat Impact into Lend for Good, is to say, what does the enterprise need to succeed? What are they trying to do? What's their capital needs? What can they afford to repay over what time frame? What makes sense for their business to work? And we think that actually, that puts people like Evan and Dee in the box seat. They're understanding their business, what they're trying to do, what money they need, how they're going to deploy it, over what time frame. And Evan, as he just talked about, he's learning, well, actually, probably I thought 2 years was going to be it, but now I'm realizing that may not have been long enough. And so, when he's redesigning loan number 3, there'll probably be a different conversation about what lessons learned. But what we think that means for people with capital is they can trust these businesses, they trust these founders, and they understand what they're doing, and they haven't signed up for something that's going to hurt their business, it's going to help them grow. And so for us, that's a really important consideration, because I think so much of what happens with capital is about power, and it's about people with money kind of dictating the terms. And what we're trying to do, and we think it's really important, especially in the context of working with Global South, that we're putting impact enterprise founders and impact enterprises in the position of knowing what's best for them and what they need to succeed. And that's a really important thing. And, the two very different businesses working in two very different environments that you've heard from, but in both cases, what the loan looks like for both of them is very different, because it's based on what they're trying to achieve, and it's based on it's based on their unique context, the capital that they need. And what we allow them to do is to tell that story to people with capital who can then get behind them and support them. I guess what Red Hat Impact, we've built Lend for Good in partnership with Start Simple with Tom. That's bringing a community of interested individuals and organizations together that can share risk, share due diligence, share their understanding of what these enterprises are about, and then jump in and support them from $500 through to $50,000, whatever. I don't know the exact numbers that were in TanWaste's loan and AgriHouse's loan, but I think upwards of 12, 13, 14 people have contributed the funds that have gone into the loans into those two businesses. And some of them have taken large positions, foundations that have a passion for East Africa have put their money into TanWaste, for example, but they're surrounded by individuals that have put in $500 or $1,000 or $2,500. And because they're motivated by support these founders, helping them unlock their impact, they're sharing an amount of money that's commensurate with who they are and what they want and what they're able to put on the table to support these impact founders. Really, what we're trying to do here is be able to connect courageous impact founders like Evan and Dee, who understand their business, with a global lender community of people that just want to help founders unlock the impact and unlock the potential of their businesses. And that's what we're about. And we think that's a key way that we can mobilize capital for impact enterprises in the Global South, like AgriHouse and TanWaste. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Cam. So I guess, the first obvious question that I want to pose, I guess, to both of you is just, what was it? How did what was it that made this model right for you? Do you think, from your point of view, the kind of model that Cameron was just describing, why was that so important for you to kind of be able to access the capital you need? And I guess, Dee, let's start with you. What were the benefits for you of obtaining impact finance and loans from Red Hat Impact initially, and then Lend for Good as well, or through Lend for Good, one should say, rather than from?
Okay, thank you. So, to be honest, in Cambodia, it's very hard to raise the capital or loan from the microfinance or bank, something like that, because the syndicates, it's a lot of risk to be like that, something like that. And also for us, the loan that we get from Red Hat or Lend for Goods, it suits us to be a founder, it suits us because we have a good grace period which means that we could focus on the business first. And also our loan is subscribed like very quick. So we will be able to plan around that. And also it's positive that so many lenders, you know, it's just like they understand, and also it's very impact model for us. So for us to be an owner or business owner, it's, you know, we need the cash flow moving around a lot. So it's good from us that Land for Good or Red Hat made us very quick to lend the money, also run the business smooth. I guess I can explain you very well.
No, that was great. Sorry, I had a dog going crazy in the background that I had to go deal with slightly in the middle of your answer. Apologies. But what I heard was wonderful. Evan, same question to you, really.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of it comes down to, yeah, look, I think there's an obvious answer of, you know, Lend for Good was probably willing to take a risk. That said, I probably could have found, let's say, more traditional institutions to go get the money. It's not crazy amounts of money that's happening here, but it is massively impactful at the end of the day. But I think the core reason that Lend for Good has been so successful for us in any way is it's lending with humanity, right? It's capital coming in where they understand that, or at least there is an acceptance of that we are in tough environments, and that there's an understanding of how that the repayment might not be in the most traditional ways, right? And I think that that matters, right? There's a lot of institutions out there that it comes down to the dollar and cents. And I really do believe that, let's say, Lend for Good comes down to the number of people you're impacting and how you're making that impact. And I think that it does remove a big burden. I can put a lot more focus on impact. I can put a lot more focus on, again, providing a public health focus message out there for 300,000 people, and the looming repayment of debt is not there. And I should also say Lend for Good is incredibly agile. I think between doing the presentation and doing the raise and receiving the money was somewhere between 25 and 30 days.
And I guess I don't know, a bit of breaking the fourth wall a bit here. It's kind of hard not to want to chip in periodically as also involved, but I feel like I want to say that we're giving Lend for Good, as a co-founder of Lend for Good, I say we're giving Lend for Good too much credit in a way, because this is not kind of Lend for Good been especially agile. It's the power of giving people the opportunity. You know, all Lend for Good does is make that opportunity accessible to people, and it's obviously those individuals and institutions who are putting in the funds who are the ones ultimately who are willing to embrace the story and embrace the impact and put their money where their values are. And I think that's, you know, in some ways a generalizable component of kind of crowd platforms and crowd mechanisms in general, is that people often just don't need to, as you said, it's a bit more of a human level decision when people, you know, when it's your money, your values, what you choose to do with it, rather than the incredibly what's the word one would, you know, what they might call sort of, you know, a sophisticated investor approach to investment, which can be, you know, very slow and very conservative. So Cameron, maybe I should bring you in actually. I should try to talk less and pose things to you, so you can share these thoughts.
Well, I just wanted to add to that. I think the important thing that we're trying to do with this model of putting the borrower in charge of what it is that they need and kind of, you know, shifting that power thing, is we're also trying to de-emphasize investor returns in this, right? We're trying to say, how do we maximize the benefit and the impact, and think about that first and put investor returns second, you know, like, and not to say that we're not trying to do commercial things that will make you as a lender money, but like the point of people turning up here is we want to help unlock the impact that these impact enterprises can have. And Evan, that's what you were talking about, right? You're talking about, you understand the reason why people are here is they want you to succeed and have the impact that you're trying to achieve, not that they're here to, hard ass chase you and say, why isn't the money in, the money in the bank and where's my 8% return? That's like secondary to people turning up is getting repaid and making their interest. The primary reason that they're here is because they want to back courageous founders. And I think that's important. It's nuance, it's shifting. And I think, Tom, you've in other talked before about, when we often come to investment, we think about the wrong risks. We think about the risk of, people losing their money that have money versus the risk of, people dying in the streets of Tanzania from, outbreaks of malaria because there's rubbish there that's not going to get collected, right? That's the real risk we should be worried about, is that people are not having their rubbish collected and they're burning stuff and they're catching disease and blah, blah, and so that for us is a pivotal difference, that we're focused on the risk of not acting, what impact, if this impact gets trapped and doesn't get to happen in Agra House and in Tan Waste, that directly impacts the lives of people. That's missed opportunities, it's missed livelihoods. And that's what's motivating the lender community and motivating us as intermediaries and as a platform at Lend for Good to kind of do this work. Is the world has a very long to-do list. This Catalyst 2030 is all about the SDGs, right? By 2030, that to-do list is big. How do we get there? And so for us, we've tried, that's not to displace other models. We're not saying you shouldn't do all the other things as well. We're saying that, there's a place for this in being able to bridge this missing middle in impact finance to get businesses like Tan Waste and Agra House going and growing. And then I'm sure they'll be bankable and investable from other sources as they grow. And that's great. And then they can move on to other forms of finance later.
So picking up on that, I'm interested in, Evan said he thought that, had he not had other options, he could have raised the money from more traditional sources potentially. Do you feel like you had, what kinds of options do you even feel like, you had available to you in Cambodia, as some, you're, I guess, both represent very much under supported founder group. I mean, women in general, let alone Khmer women. You're working in a really interesting, I think, innovative area with alternative proteins. Did you look around much in terms of what was the available options, and then what do you see as the options for someone like you in Cambodia?
For Cambodian, for the bank, they're looking for hard title. For example, you have a land or house or any property, so we have to put our land title, for example, 5 years, 10 years, so we cannot move to anywhere. That is the the hard for us. Yeah, like especially for the new business. When we start, we don't have like any property as the family business, so it's very hard. So for me, like an option, I think first when we start, we get like a grant, and then after that, it luckily that we meet Red Hat, so we present the business, and then that's why we got from now.
Cool. There's a couple of questions from Mike Reed. Thank you, Mike Reed, from Agris Ventures, for you, Cam, but I think touches on this and interested potentially in you guys shipping in afterwards, but just kind of to the extent that you've explored or that you deploy, and this is probably as Red Hat Impact, but other types of models. So, equity, in addition to debt financing, income share agreements, and so on, like in terms of, that orientation around what I guess, where I think this comes from and when this popped up was when you were talking about, starting with what type of capital does the enterprise need. So I guess what's the suite that you explore in that context?
Yeah, look, so Mike, wearing my Red Hat Impact hat, not my Lend for Good hat. Red Hat Impact, we are agnostic as to what the source of funding can and should be for impact enterprises. So, we will direct people to crowdfunding, rewards-based crowdfunding or donation-based crowdfunding, if that's the right mix for right now, or we will look at, crowd equity or facilitating small equity raises again, if that makes sense. And we have just started looking at some revenue-based models, income share agreements, revenue-based financing kind of models. I think one of the reasons we keep coming back to debt, though, is just because of its flexibility and the targeted use and liquidity, and also that it doesn't care about organizational structures. Quite a few of the I think Tan Waste is different, and AgriHouse, I'm actually not sure about what the kind of legal share structure would be there. But for a lot of these businesses, kind of getting into equity around kind of cap tables and shares, it's only applicable if that's the kind of business you are, a for-profit. One of the things that we like about being able to use debt is, and we work with not-for-profits and charities and cooperatives and those kind of businesses where trying to do stuff on an equity footing is just really difficult. So practically, I think we prefer debt-based models, and I guess the philosophical reason we also prefer that is, I guess, what we saw happening, and when we built Red Hat Impact, is that too many founders were giving equity away too early at too low valuations because it was the only source of capital available. And we wanted non-dilutive capital that founders could use to get further along their journey. So when they did do equity events, they were getting a better price and they were getting a fairer price and retaining control of their business and of their business for longer. So we probably do have a preference for non-dilutive approaches. But we're agnostic, and as you said, Tom, like, we're trying to find what the best solution is. But like in the case of AgriHouse and Tan Waste, we don't have a great understanding in those markets of what equity investment would look like, or contact with equity investors in Tanzania and Cambodia that would do equity investments in those enterprises. And certainly there is very little appetite of Australian equity investors to put money into Tanzania and Cambodia because they don't understand the regulatory regime in those countries either. So, it's probably, it's challenging. I think, the equity stuff, you kind of need people in their own country quite often. Even you want to do stuff global, you tend to have to be a US based venture to access American venture capital, right? So debt seems to have a lot more flexibility. Private debt, huge market. There's lots of stuff happening in that space. It just hasn't really been applied surgically to this missing middle and impact finance in the global south. And that's where we think there's a real significant opportunity. And it's not just us, Athena, I'm trying to think of Athena Global, Kayleen Alvarez, the work that they've been doing across Africa and Southeast Asia. There's a lot of awesome stuff happening in this space. It's not just us, but there's a lot of diversity in that. And I think, non-dilutive is definitely something that a lot of people are preferencing. And also the flexibility of not forcing impact enterprises to be profit focused in the sense of doing equity deals. I think that's something else that is definitely a kind of philosophical position. Tom, I did see there was a question there for Evan that came through as well.
Yeah, I was about to bring that in next. I just wondered if I could just, once again, just chip in one final thought to Mike. It's also that something I see is that debt can cycle more quickly. Obviously, it depends on the nature of the loan, but equity deals are very long term. So while that suits people with a certain bank balance who can, who have long enough to let that play out and so on, when it comes to kind of democratizing impact investment, people who have some money that they would like to, put into good things, but not huge amounts, and they need some sort of obviously there's no guarantee of return, but they need to think about what's a likely, what's a probable time frame as opposed to the complete unknown. And in most instances, unlikely to ever result in a liquidity event from an equity. And so we already see, and I think Red Hat have more data on this because having done this for a lot longer than what we've been doing on in the platform model, but that when people get their funds back, or they're highly likely to put straight into another impact loan, maybe to take the return but put the capital back in. And so kind of the same amount of original money could end up fueling 10 or 20 enterprises in the same time that it could have just supported one enterprise through equity. So I think that's another interesting piece with this. But yeah, Evan, let's and just the shout out to others for more questions in the chat. Would love to see them, and we'll bring them in. This one is from Green Life Generation. It sounds like this is an area of interest for them. Can you clarify whether TAN waste is mainly dealing with organic waste, or all solid waste, e.g. plastics, etc.?
Yeah, look, right now it is that kind of MSW, municipal solid waste. I think getting up and getting going and getting the stock. Also, you know, Kane was just talking about regulatory frameworks. There's not a, let's say, recycling framework at the moment. That said, if there is value, you'll literally see street children walking up and down, picking up bottles and putting them in these massive sacks, you know, to the point where you're getting 400 bottles perfectly stacked in a big sack, and they're taken to the local plastic recycler. So in some ways, the recycling is being done kind of unofficially because there's value there, right? You know, you're not going to see metal scrap coming out, because that will already either be kept, or someone will actually kind of get to that before we have an opportunity to get it. So we're very much doing just the household waste, whereas organics, I guess it's actually kind of funny because most of the other stuff where there is value, such as plastics and metals, it's already being informally recycled. That 60% is much higher in what we actually collect. I would say 80% of what we're collecting is actually organic waste.
Yeah, cool. That's interesting. Just while we've got you, I was interested to pick up on one thing that you did mention in your kind of presentation earlier, which is around the blowback, and just thinking, I guess, about that balance, that wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that, because it's something we do often see. I'll say, as a global platform, Starts and Good's been doing philanthropic crowdfunding and pre-sale crowdfunding for 10 years before co-founding Lend for Good. And certainly it's a very common model we've seen. And I guess it's disproportionately likely to crowdfund is when there is a blend of both local owners and founders, but also not uncommonly an expat co-founder as well, who often then creates the link in some ways back to their network, using their networks and their so on, to gives them greater access to things like crowdfunding platforms, which is, somewhat, more likely to, Australians are more likely to support through crowdfunding platforms than Tanzanians themselves, obviously. So I'd love to, if you just kind of maybe just share a few more reflections on how you think of that balance, and I guess the positives and negatives that might come from that blend, and how you did deal with the blowback that you experienced.
Yeah, fair enough. I think we had a pretty strong relationship with, we developed a pretty strong relationship with the municipality, which is, I guess, the master holder of the contract at the end of the day. And I think a lot of the blowback was that I think they thought it was supposed to go to a local company. And I think we had to actually spend some time and educate, saying that, no, look, we are a local company. We have local equity. We have local workers. Even the fact, I would say this, one of our drivers wasn't from Kahama, he was from Mwanza, right? And we got blowback from that. It was like, no, look, it's an experienced waste operator that's actually going to have a cascading effect of training, defensive driving classes, and everything like that, and the proper way to collect and handle waste. So even we're trying to bring experience, bringing blowback, not just from me doing it, but actually not being local in the sense that one of our drivers was from 200 miles away, as opposed to hiring within the city. So it really came in at kind of all angles and all possibilities. I think it was also, we're an easy target. And one of the other challenges we faced is kind of culture change, in the sense of people aren't used to having to pay for waste management. They're used to taking it out and throwing it on the fire that's smoldering in the front yard. I think that it is a change. It is a behavior change that kind of comes in that regard, and having the expectations that, yep, you're going to put your waste out there, you're going to pay for it, and it's actually going to be taken away. This is all new. So we're getting blowback from the local community. It's like, wait a minute, I'm have to pay now it's free to burn my waste. I have to pay now for you actually taking it away, and it's mandated by the bylaws of the city. So I think we were surprised that, yes, maybe I think we were pretty prepared that there would be blowback by me being involved, but I think there was just blowback from every single angle and possibility. It probably took us a couple months to actually get good answers for everything.
Yeah. Dee, I wonder if you have any thoughts on this. Not to put you on the spot, but you obviously, you're very much heavily Cambodian based in founders, but you've had some important contributors with different backgrounds as well, and experiences from outside Cambodia. How do you think that's, I guess, both helped and hindered in some ways your progress?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
So just that kind of blended, I guess the ways in which both the extent to which you're completely, you're locally initiated and owned, which you very much are, has both helped and hindered, both whether locally or internationally, and the extent to which you have some, at least one co-founder with, whose primary work experience was previously in Australia and so on, whether that has created any blowback locally or helped or hindered in other ways. So just this idea of diverse co-founding teams, I guess, in local markets made up of both locals but expats as well. Do you think that's a help or a hindrance, and how has it affected your opportunities?
So our co-founder partner, he helped with the business strategy, and and then we work together related to the tech improving as well. So mostly we focus on the sales strategy, because our goal, we want to be able to export our powder to the global market. So I hope I can answer you very well.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, certainly with that export ambition, it's an asset to have people with more international connections than being just a purely, people with only Cambodian experience and Cambodian connections, given the nature of the market you're in. So I could definitely see that too.
Yeah.
Let me just, I'll just,
yeah.
So
please.
Tom, I was just going to add to that. I think Evan's point that you raised, Evan, about, like the guy from 200 kilometers up the road in terms of like having the skills and experience. I think, it's one of the challenges, I think, of enterprises anywhere, is trying to find people with the right experience to be able to contribute, and getting that balance right in the early stages between, other priorities within the business and finding experienced people. And I kind of feel like, similar to what you're describing, Dee, you need people with the experience of, kind of export. And in the Cambodian market, there are Cambodians with that experience, but they're very expensive to be able to access. From my conversations with you, trying to find good people and retain them is really hard, because they get jobs in the big multinationals and that kind of stuff. So trying to find the right people with the right skills. Like, we're providing financial capital, but the human capital is also a constraint on the growth of these impact enterprises and founders, and trying to find other people in market that can help them with that stuff. That I guess Red Hat Impact tries to do some stuff on the kind of advice strategy part, but we really can't get too deep because we're working with lots of enterprises. But we do want to find more of that local capacity to support people as well. But I think we're focusing on financial capital on this call, but I think what Evan and Dee have just raised there is also a human capital component, right? Around finding people with experience to help these things work.
Yeah, and how they fit together naturally, because that's also one of the things that people who are providing financial capital are looking for and trying to work out. If you have the team you need and the experience you need to deliver on the opportunity, to realize the opportunity. We've only got a few minutes left, so there's a little handful of questions here for you, Cameron, which I thought maybe we could blast through rapid fire. I didn't want to seem biased in over selecting Len for Good related, but there's a few here that speak to that. And so maybe just if I could put them all out, and you can just kind of do quick, tweet length kind of responses to each of them. One is around Cameron, how do you build and manage relationships of trust within these multinational multi-nation, multi-site debt financing model? That's a big question. I thought, and maybe somewhat connected to that is someone asked about the currency risks and does the borrower assume all risks of currency and what currencies are currently available? And then there's a question about have we thought about using crypto, or is anyone using crypto or blockchain to lower transaction costs, lessen inflation-based purchasing power, etc. So take any or all of those at just a few minutes. Yeah.
Great questions, and yes, we could dive into that for a long time. Look, I think trust is at the core here, and I think it's one of the reasons why Lend for Good's model is that we only list loans that are being presented by impact intermediaries. So we're looking to impact intermediaries like Red Hat Impact, like Zebra Uni, like Social Enterprise Finance Australia, to have relationships with borrowers, and it's their relationship that they have with that borrower that is crucial, and they present that information about that relationship of trust and ongoing support that exists between the intermediary and the borrower as part of their request for finance on the Lend for Good marketplace. That it just asks you to describe as an intermediary, what's your relationship with those guys? How long have you known them? What is going to be your post-loan support? So that trust piece and that relationship piece is really important. And I think, we try and keep stuff small to begin with so that you can begin to learn on both sides and kind of, build trust and relationships over time. So with smaller things first. In terms of the currency stuff, like Lend for Good currently transacts in both Australian dollars and US dollars only at the moment. We could go into others, but we don't. And the model is very much, on the borrower side, they accept risk. On the lender side, they accept any currency risks. And Lend for Good has to accept currency risks and whatever through the middle. So everyone assumes the risk and returns tied to their own stuff, and also all the transaction fees that align with that. So that's where the question around blockchain and DeFi and everything else comes in. The aspiration for Lend for Good is very much the way that we expect we'll be able to grow and to be faster and better at all of this and remove so much of this. So much of the drag of international currency transactions and fees and everything is by using smart contracts and digital wallets, engaging with tokens and crypto in some way. That is definitely on the roadmap and coming, and we're doing a lot of work understanding that. In parallel, the on-ramps and off-ramps for fiat to crypto are getting better and easier. Certainly for getting fiat to crypto is pretty easy, but where we need it to work is when we put money, when we send in a digital wallet to Tanway's digital wallet, Evan needs to be able to get that crypto or that digital currency and translate it into money in Tanzania that he can use to pay people and he can use to buy trucks. There's no point having the digital stuff like this. It's not recognized and used in that country, right? So we need the off ramps. At the moment, the fees are probably commensurate for gas fees and whatever else, when you kind of get into up fiat and moving between fiat and crypto, in emerging markets anyway. So yes, and we think that will come, and we think that will still solve some of these currency risk issues, transaction cost issues, transaction time issues. And it's definitely in the future that we see for Lend for Good. But we're also trying to do it at a pace where this ecosystem of technologies is getting better and faster too.
Cool. Thank you, Cam. There's also just one final question at the end, which you might want to. It's a lengthy one. I don't know if I want to read it all out, but it's introducing Book Dash. Thank you, Zanri, for sharing that. It looks like it's an NGO, social enterprise though, publisher in South Africa. So kind of in some ways saying this has been interesting, but very focused on health and agri. One thing I'd say is I think, this model can apply to any sector, provided there is a link, I think, to one of our principles of Lend for Good. And I think increasingly what people are looking for as a bit of a shorthand around impact is being able to connect, obviously, to one of the SDGs, as is so important to Catalyst 2030. And so I don't think it's exclusive. This model is in any way exclusive to, particular SDGs or particular industries. Just quickly, I guess for you, Cameron, is whether this is more Red Hat, I'd say, but service offering includes helping broker relationships between NGO social enterprises in other parts of the world, say South Africa, with foundations and funds in Australia. Is that something, the kind of thing Red Hat Impact ever takes on, or do you know who does? Perhaps would be another way of putting it.
I mean, I guess as we're saying, like, we want to understand what the enterprise needs to succeed and what the right type of capital is. And if it needs to be philanthropy, then like we can kind of lean into that as well and try and, you know, connect people with the right thing. So yes, like, you know, we're capital agnostic. Our whole thing is here to how do we have impact enterprises succeed? And if the type of capital they need is donation, then we'll figure out, you know, try and help where we can on that front as well. So yes, like all forms.
So check out their website. I've to get in touch and drop them a line. I put the links to AgriHouse, Town Waste, Red Hat Impact, and Lend for Good in the chat. There are also links at the top of the chat, and then repeated a little bit further down, but about Catalyst 2030. As a reminder, Catalyst 2030 is a fast-growing global movement of people and organizations committed to achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. We love being a part of the network. It's there's a lot going on. It can be a little overwhelming at first, but it's great to have opportunities like Catalyzing Change Week that kind of focuses us together, and you can see, you know, the hundreds of events that are on over just 5 days just shows how vibrant this network is, and how many innovations and initiatives and experiments and collaborations have been run to move us forward towards the achievement of those SDGs. So it seems like maybe the form's not working at the moment. There's some reports of that in the chat, but I would definitely recommend you hold on to that link if that's the case, and try again tomorrow. Click through, join the network. You can join as an individual to be connected if you're not already. And please connect with any and all of the enterprises that you've met tonight. I think also, I put just the URL links, but those websites contain links to their presence on social media, and at least I am, and I hopefully speak for all of us, that, you know, we're happy for people to connect with us through LinkedIn, and particularly if there's opportunities to work together, or, you know, if any of this sparked ideas for you around ways that we could all collaborate further. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here on your evening, day, afternoon, day, morning, depending on where you are in the world, and I hope you have a very enjoyable evening or day to come. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Mel, did you want to say any final words to Catalyst, or are we good? Where else? Okay,
okay.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Oh, 3 a.m. Wow, that's right, Americans. We had Americans here at 3 a.m. Well done, Mike. Appreciate you making those efforts. All right, cheers, guys. See you all soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.